New York City, 11:47 p.m., rain hammered against the hotel windows. Emily Carter stared at her phone, unknown number. I know what you did in room 302. Her stomach dropped. Room 302 wasn't just a hotel room, it was a mistake, one that was supposed to stay buried 3 years ago during a corporate retreat. She immediately called the number back. The number you have dialed is not in service. Classic psychological move: create fear. Remove clarity. Let the mind destroy itself. The next morning at work felt different. Were people staring longer than usual? Were those whispers about her? At lunch, she found a plain envelope on her desk. Inside was a printed CCTV image, hotel corridor, outside room 302, timestamp. 3 years ago, written on the back, you owe me. No threats, no demands, just uncertainty, and uncertainty is more powerful than any weapon. That night, the phone calls started, no voice, just breathing, slow. Controlled. Intentional. This was psychological priming. When the threat is unknown, the brain fills in the worst-case scenario. Her anxiety doubled every hour. Then another text, meet me tomorrow. Same hotel. The manipulator wanted control, control over her emotions, control over her decisions. But Emily wasn't helpless. The hotel lobby hadn't changed, same lighting, same smell, same elevator. Room 302, a man stood outside the door, Mark Henderson, former colleague, fired after Emily reported him for misconduct. He smiled. Miss me? What do you want? Emily asked. Mark chuckled softly. Nothing. I just wanted to remind you. Guilt doesn't expire. He showed her his phone, a video clip, 3 years ago. Emily copying confidential company files onto a flash drive. If that video leaked, her career would be destroyed. Emily took a deep breath. You're playing the wrong game, Mark. His smile faded slightly. She pulled out her own phone, an email draft addressed to the company's board of directors. Subject line, security breach confession evidence. I was already planning to confess, she said calmly. If this leaks, we both go down. You're in that footage too. Silence. For the first time, Mark looked uncertain. This was reverse manipulation. Turn the fear back on the manipulator, make them question their. The next morning, Mark's number was permanently disconnected. Emily resigned 2 weeks later. But she learned something powerful. The strongest weapon in dark psychology isn't fear, it's awareness. Narrator voice. Sometimes the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one with the secret. It's the one who knows how to use it. 2 weeks later, Emily thought it was over. Mark disappeared, phone disconnected, no more messages. She resigned quietly and moved to Boston, hoping distance would erase everything. It didn't. At 2:13 a.m., her laptop turned on by itself, screen glowing in the dark. One notification, unknown sender. You handled that well. Her blood ran cold. This wasn't Mark's style. Mark was impulsive. Emotional. This felt calculated. Another message appeared. You understand manipulation. That makes you valuable. Valuable. This wasn't revenge, this was recruitment. Over the next few days, small things began happening. A stranger holding eye contact too long at a coffee shop, a man on the subway reading a book titled Influence Control, her grocery receipt highlighting random letters that spelled, watching. Coincidence? No. This was pattern conditioning. Make the target hyper-aware, create meaning in randomness, induce paranoia. The most powerful prison isn't physical, it's psychological. Inside the building, a projector flickered to life, images appeared on the wall, photos of different people, men, women, professionals, all caught in compromising moments. A voice echoed from the darkness, calm. Genderless, we identify individuals under pressure. We observe how they respond to blackmail, stress, and moral conflict. Emily's chest tightened. You orchestrated this? Yes. Mark was a candidate. He failed. You didn't. Her mind raced. Room 302 wasn't random, it was engineered. The hotel, the CCTV, the threats, all controlled. This was never about revenge, it was about selection. We are not criminals, the voice continued. We are behavioral architects. We test integrity. Adaptability. Strategic thinking. Emily whispered, "Why me?" "Because when cornered, you didn't panic. You countered. That makes you dangerous." A pause, "Join us." Silence filled the room, then the final sentence, "or become our next case study." Emily stood still, then she smiled. "You've been watching me for 3 years," she said calmly, "but I've been watching back." She pulled a small device from her pocket. A live stream indicator blinked red. "Everything you just said is broadcasting." The projector shut off instantly, lights snapped on, but the room was empty, no equipment, no cables, no projector, just dust. Her device screen read, "No signal," then her phone vibrated, "Unknown sender, good. You're learning." Emily walked out of the building. This wasn't over, because the most dangerous psychological war is the one where you don't know who's observing you, or why. In the world of dark psychology, manipulation isn't about control. It's about selection. And sometimes, you were chosen long before you knew the game existed. 3 days later, Emily stopped running. If they were watching her, she would give them something worth watching, the bait. She returned to Manhattan, same abandoned building, same silence. This time, she wasn't afraid. She stood in the center of the room and spoke calmly. "I accept." Nothing happened. Then her phone vibrated. "Prove it." Another message followed. "Tomorrow, 8 p.m. The Langford Building. 14th floor." No address, just the name. She smiled, because there was no Langford Building. Which meant only one thing. This was a perception test, the hidden layer. Emily went home and searched property records, buried under dissolved corporations. She found it. The Langford Building used to exist, demolished 12 years ago, rebuilt, renamed. Now operating as a private behavioral research firm, public name, Crown Behavioral Analytics, private purpose? Unknown. She had just passed test 1. 8 p.m., glass walls. Minimalist lobby. No logos. An elevator opened without her pressing a button. 14th floor, a single table, 3 people waiting, perfect posture. Neutral expressions. One woman leaned forward. "Why do you want to join us?" Emily answered without hesitation, "I don't. But if you're studying power, I'd rather be inside the system than under it." A subtle shift in their expressions, interest. Another man asked, "What did you feel when we threatened your career?" "Control." Emily R. Emily replied, "Silence. Fear is predictable. Control is leverage." They exchanged glances. She wasn't reacting, she was analyzing. The revelation. The woman finally spoke, "You believe this is about manipulation?" "It's not." A screen behind them lit up, dozens of live feeds appeared, people in offices, apartments, coffee shops, normal Americans, being observed. "We don't manipulate," she said calmly, "we map behavior. We predict outcomes before choices are made." Emily stared at the screens. "This is surveillance." "No," the woman corrected, "this is behavioral forecasting." Then she dropped the truth. Room 302 wasn't about recruitment. It was about calibration. You weren't chosen because you fought back. You were chosen because you were statistically predictable. The words hit harder than any threat. Predictable. No, she was strategic, she was careful, her thoughts paused. What if even that was expected? The woman continued, "You think you're infiltrating us. But every step you took was modeled. The resignation. The move. The return. All projected, all calculated." Emily felt it, the smallest crack in her confidence. And that was their goal, not fear, doubt, because doubt rewires identity. Emily leaned back in her chair, then she laughed, softly. "You're right," she said, "I am predictable." The 3 recruiters watched closely. She continued, "Because you designed the scenario with limited variables." She pointed to the screen. "You study reaction within controlled environments. But real chaos? You can't model that." Before they could respond, the building lights flickered, emergency alarms triggered, screens went black. One of the recruiters stood up sharply. This isn't part of the protocol. Emily remained seated, calm. You're not the only ones who study behavior. She slid a folder across the table. Inside were printed reports, evidence she'd gathered, patterns in their shell companies, employee rotations, digital infrastructure leaks. You rely on psychological superiority, she said. But you underestimated one variable. Adaptation. Security rushed into the room, but not for her, for them, because downstairs, federal agents were entering. As chaos unfolded, the woman across from Emily smiled, not panicked, not afraid, just impressed. You finally stepped outside the model, she said, good. Then she whispered, Phase 2 begins. The lights cut out completely. The next morning, news outlets reported a routine audit of Crown Behavioral Analytics. No arrests, no charges, no public scandal. The company's website, gone. Emily stood in her apartment, staring at a final message on her phone, unknown sender. Prediction updated. You're no longer the subject. You're the variable. In dark psychology, the most dangerous illusion is believing you're in control. Because sometimes, you're not escaping the experiment. You're evolving it. 6 months later, no more messages, no more unknown numbers, no more coordinates. Crown Behavioral Analytics had vanished. No website, no records, no trace. Almost like it never existed, almost. Emily changed. She no longer reacted to fear. She studied it. Every conversation became data. Every facial twitch, a signal. Every pause, a calculation. Because once you realize you're being observed, you start observing back. One night, while reviewing old documents, she noticed something small. Room 302, not just a hotel room. She searched architectural layouts of the original hotel in New York. Room 302 was positioned directly above the building's Security Operations Center, meaning, whoever designed the test wanted maximum surveillance access. But here's what they didn't expect: the security server logs, archived, unwiped. She found timestamps, external remote access, 3 years ago, tracked to a private location, Washington, D.C., registered under a federal behavioral research grant. This wasn't a rogue organization, this was institutional, bigger, smarter, untouchable. The real truth. Emily leaned back in her chair. Everything made sense now. This wasn't recruitment, it wasn't blackmail, it wasn't even prediction, it was stress mapping. They create controlled moral crises, observe decision-making under pressure, build behavioral models, then sell them to corporations, to political campaigns, to intelligence contractors. Predict who breaks, predict who lies, predict who leads, and she had been one of their cleanest data samples. Until she broke pattern. The final move. Emily didn't go to the media, she didn't go to the authorities. Because you can't expose a system that audits itself. Instead, she did something worse. She wrote a paper, anonymous, title, Adaptive Behavior in Controlled Psychological Environments. Inside it, she outlined their entire methodology, but with one critical modification: a flaw, a blind spot in predictive modeling. Unscripted emotional disruption. Chaos introduced at random intervals destroys long-term forecasting accuracy. In simple terms, make humans unpredictable again. The paper spread quietly through academic circles, then corporate risk departments, then cybersecurity communities. Not viral, strategic. She wasn't attacking the machine, she was corrupting the data. 2 weeks later, her phone buzzed. Unknown sender, you've contaminated the model. She smiled. Another message followed. Why? Her reply was simple: because you forgot something. 3 dots appeared. Typing. She sent the final message before they could respond. The observer changes the outcome. Then she turned off the phone, forever. Final narration. In dark psychology, power isn't about manipulation. It's about understanding human behavior so deeply that you can predict it, but the moment people become aware of the system begins to fail. Because awareness creates resistance, and resistance creates chaos, and chaos cannot be modeled. Narrator, slow, chilling tone. They thought she was a subject, they thought she was predictable, but in the end, she became the anomaly.